Thanks, Carl. Elvira, can you remove all the bragging slides? Because he just said, no, actually I want to apologize. I did this, I'm so ahead of the curve. I did this presentation like weeks ago. I don't procrastinate at all, so it's good. But that's my apology to Mark and Elvira. I just got it done a couple days ago, but okay, let me post this here. This goes to kind of what Corero does. We were talking about Legos. I think Carl mentioned Legos. I didn't just throw this up there. But this is what our solutions engineering team, sales engineering team, we actually call them solutions engineers because I think Corey mentioned knowing networking, knowing security makes you kind of a unicorn. So I had the option of unicorns or big Lego blocks. So I stuck with the Lego blocks. But that's what our team does is we take all these building blocks that our engineering team has given us and put it into a solution that meets your business objectives and DDoS needs. So I'm going to use a lot of big words. Corero has a lot of big stuff, a lot of stuff. We have VMs, we have service portal, orchestration, analytics, detectors, protectors, appliances, 10 gig, 100 gig, 40 gig. These are some of the building blocks that we use and that we've been talking about so far today. We also have lots of deployment options. So we have scrubbing, data path, edge mitigation or edge integration. We have inline protection, another layer of integration and building blocks that our solution can leverage. And it gets even deeper, right? I'm going to go back and cover each one of these in excruciating detail. But we have detection profiles, protection profiles, clusters of devices, authentication groups, address groups, rule groups, mitigation templates, router templates, different vendor templates. Really, all of these are building blocks, of course, that our engineering team has designed. I think Sean was mentioning it like in a very scalable way so that we can ultimately put together a very flexible solution for you. And then you have your own kind of needs as well, right? And some of these, I'm sure, some of these might actually be some of you guys. I don't know how close I came, but some of them also represent the people on your teams. You have sales guys, they're like, if I had this, I could close the deal. We have finance that says it better cost nothing. You say, I want something simple. Like all those building blocks, if you just look at them as individual pieces and throw them down somewhere, it looks like a mess, right? You need revenue. Customers say, I want it better, faster, stronger, like the bionic man, right? I just want my weekends back. That's a common thing we hear as well. Who has this guy in the middle? He's like, the guy on the team is like, oh, I got an idea. I can do this. I want to do that. So we have a solution for all these guys. And it's really called Smart Wall 1. So taking all those building blocks and deploying it in a way that meets your business objectives, whether it be scrubbing, multi-tenant services, inline, integration with cloud, etc. Or, as we like to call it, the Millennium Falcon. So we can either be unicorns or we're just expert Lego construction builders, I guess. So what we were going to do is cover a couple use cases, and we talked about these a little bit today, one starting with Jeff, but these are actually real customer examples that we've deployed Lego sets for, I guess. This is a regional healthcare network, and they were under what they thought was a DDoS attack. They were under pain. They have multiple hospitals. This is what's representing multiple hospitals down here. Firewalls, NAT devices, tons of stateful protection, not really servicing their own hosted services, but servicing the hospitals getting out to those services, right? And so when they were having issues, their firewalls were going down. They didn't have a lot of visibility. Because the devices that were trying to protect them were going down, they were losing the visibility that could tell them what the problem was. And so they expected it to be a DDoS problem. They had third-party cloud DDoS, but they didn't really know what victim, what IP address. They have hundreds and thousands of IP addresses. Which ones am I going to send up there if I don't have telemetry telling me which ones is under attack, as an example. So the solution we deployed was a very simple inline solution with our N by 10 gig. They have redundant routers in a single data center, but this is actually servicing all the internet connectivity for that regional healthcare network. We deployed, from a software standpoint, our CMS. It stands for Configuration Management System, but as you heard earlier today, we do use NSO, so it's more of an orchestrator of our protections across the network. And then we also obviously have our analytics platform with SecureWatch Analytics. And the deployment strategy was inline. They wanted something simple, and also because it's probably their history, they were very comfortable with the inline approach. They have redundant firewalls, they have inline bypass units. This is something that really resonated with them. And then from an orchestration standpoint, very simple. Single default protection policy, very simple. So even though we have all those Lego blocks that you could build, you don't have to use them all, right? Sometimes you're just assembling the car, not the Death Star, right? You don't have to use every single one every time to accomplish your mission. And then they also wanted some link saturation cloud signaling. So they wanted on-prem DDoS visibility, still with the insurance of having a cloud DDoS solution upstream of them. What it ended up being is, it wasn't a DDoS attack that was actually impacting them, but our analytics and our visibility into their network from an outside perspective in front of their firewalls gave them the insight to know what was actually causing the problem. And it was actually outbound flash crowd type of stuff, NAT, and other kind of stateful failures, but it was being really generated by outbound, but what you would see is firewalls going down. So that was, any questions? Regional healthcare? No? Good? Am I upbeat enough for y'all? I know it's hot. All right. Here's another example. Residential broadband provider. Their needs, they had an existing DDoS solution. It was too slow, very manual. They wanted faster solution with a lower operational burden. Sometimes they were under attack and they would have to react. But the amount of money they were making, it didn't really justify doing this as a service, like selling DDoS as a service. They were just looking to protect their own infrastructure. But they also wanted to augment the capability, because usually in traditional DDoS protection, monitoring this transit peering edge is expensive with some of our competitor solutions. Monitoring the customer edge, which is usually 10x the size of your transit and peering edge from a bandwidth standpoint, is exponentially expensive. So they were only monitoring the transit and peering edge, but they wanted to also extend that visibility to the customer edge so we could monitor east-west attacks, so customer-to-customer type of attacks. And they also wanted to leverage, they made a huge investment in their router infrastructure, so they wanted to use that as much as possible. Wow, that's a lot. That's a busy slide. But what you have here is, from a hardware standpoint, we didn't deploy anything in this solution. It was all software. We have our orchestration, our analytics, and then we use a detector. Julian mentioned taking sample packet mirror. That is our preferred network telemetry source, so that we can do the most accurate and fast detection as possible. And in this case, we were integrating with the routers based off of the specific capabilities that those routers had. So for Arista devices, we were issuing specific BGP flow spec mitigations, and also for Juniper routers, we were issuing netconf Juniper filtering. That capability to do both simultaneously, depending on attack vector, is what the engineering team has designed with the CMS and the mitigation templates that we support. So yeah, that's the orchestration part. Single detection policy, blocking all attacks at the edge, whether it be customer edge or transit peering edge. You guys can make it interactive. Anything here? Go ahead.
How would you characterize the detection? Inbound, outbound, or bidirectional?
So all of our detection is based off of the destination itself. So if you, in our detection control, you can restrict it to just your own IP addresses, and then in essence, would it be inbound or east-west? It would be towards your resources in that case, or you just open it up to everything, and regardless of the destination, the detection will be, could be outbound as well. Most of the time, we're doing it really focused on the IP ranges and scope of the entity that we're protecting versus trying to protect the outside world. And we can also say, automatically mitigate everything that's destined to your IP addresses and only alert, put everything else in monitor, only alert when you see an outbound attack. That way you might not want to proactively block it, but you might want to know about it.
Just one item to note, and I hope I'm not stealing Joel's thunder with this, but because we see the outbound and we are connected to every one of our customers always, we can actually begin to see the weather forming from attacks from inside companies because we are collectively watching the same destination IP being originated from multiple sources from around the world, actually potentially generating a DDoS attack through a different vector. And we can predict that, and that's part of this intelligence service that offering that we have is to be able to see and also predict movement of outbound attacks, which is a very, I don't know if it's unique, but it's a very, very privileged position that we have, maybe unique.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Key takeaways: software only, no hardware, leverage your existing router infrastructure, gain visibility into your entire network versus just the north-south edge. Use case number 3, this is more of a regional ISP. Some of these use cases are potentially from people in here, by the way. So this is a regional, like business-to-business ISP. Not a lot of residential. They service other providers that serve residential type of customers and other small, medium business. But this is kind of a service provider, if you will. They had a dual vendor DDoS approach, a separate vendor doing detection, and another vendor doing the actual scrubbing from an appliance standpoint. They wanted to lower their operational burden. They didn't have a great customer-facing portal. That's one of the challenges you'll see with a dual vendor approach, is taking all of that information and putting it into a portal unless you built it your own. It's going to be challenging to take detection information with scrubbing information into a customer-facing portal unless, again, you want to spend dollars with your IT team. They wanted a single platform. They wanted to augment their capabilities to see customer to customer and east-west attacks. They're worried about that. And one of the things that we haven't shown any stats on, but there's a large, there's a large residential provider in the US that had a huge outbound attack because certain wireless devices within their residential environment were infected and became part of a botnet. They weren't the victims, they weren't the destination of the attack, but they had so many bots on their network, on their residential network, that it actually created a DDoS solution within the subscriber layer and aggregation layer within their network. So huge regional blackouts, and we've seen this. Our own security team also has done some studies and a blog post about microtick routers that are also being used as botnets to launch DDoS attacks as well. So if you think about this from a bigger scale, if they're in certain parts of the world where like vendors like MikroTik might have 80% saturation in some levels, you could actually do an outbound DDoS attack that prevents traffic from even getting outside of a country. And it's the reverse aspect. It's not inbound, it's outbound. But back to this use case, they wanted to also augment their ability because they're a service provider, so they have customers that also connect or multi-homed and have other connections. So they wanted to offer DDoS protection as a service, but they also want to be able to protect these other circuits as well, that don't flow, the traffic doesn't flow through their network. So in this case, we deployed from a hardware standpoint, because of how their network was, we could regionally deploy NTD 1100s, our 100 gig platform, in the core of their network. And the way we did that, we were able to protect and scrub both outbound traffic as well as inbound traffic using MPLS and some routing and flow spec capabilities. So back to Corey's point, like half of what our team does is security and DDoS specific, and the other half is helping our customers understand what network technology they can leverage to maximize how they can do protection from a DDoS standpoint in their network. So then from a software standpoint, we had CMS, we had analytics, we had a detector, and we had our services portal, which would extend that visibility of the DDoS protection all the way down to the customers. The deployment style was a detect and redirect, so we were monitoring the entire edge of the network from a sample packet mirror standpoint, and then when that attack is detected, we redirect with BGP flow spec to the scrubbing centers, and then we have orchestration, single default detection policy, but we could have multiple detection policies if needed, including specific ones for specific customer cluster devices down below. So all of this can feed into one CMS. One CMS can orchestrate on-prem systems from downstream customers, and all that information can feed into the service portal. This might be relevant to tier point as well, maybe. I just want to, if you want to manage other customers within your data center, for example. Any questions on this? No? Okay. Man. Huh? Unless, this could be anybody. Okay, this is somebody who's actually, I don't think they're going to mind because they're going to speak after lunch. So I'll talk about this one. It's our friend Alvaro at Tech Enabler. But this is a managed service provider providing DDoS protection as a service without really having initially like a network per se, right? A typical transit network, right? They wanted to offer DDoS and manage DDoS for their customers that have networks in different service providers. They needed multi-tenant reporting. They needed it to be revenue generation. I mean, part of this business plan is based off of making money. They wanted the protection to be automatic. They needed to be able to support different types of customers. So I just covered 3 different use cases. They wanted to be able to serve all of those use cases. Customers that might want inline, customers that might want data path, customers that might want detect and redirect or edge. So they had all of those different customer types that they wanted to serve from an MSP standpoint. And from the solution standpoint, we started with, or they started with, NTD 1100s or 100 gig as basically a scrubbing or data path deployment. So certain customers that are in the same facility can just do a simple cross connect, and we just do VLAN tag translation, and they can send their traffic based off of their desires, whether they always divert the traffic to the scrubbing solution, which is in a different cage colo space, or whether it's detect and redirect, for example, or whether they're using other third-party detection. The customers themselves can choose when and how they get to these NTDs by just manipulating a next hop path. And then from a software standpoint, we had the CMS for orchestration, analytics, we have detectors. Now the interesting thing here about our detectors is those could be hosted by the MSP themselves and remotely collecting either NetFlow, SFlow, or sample packet mirror from the remote customer, and then triggering the route redirect to the same scrubbing solutions that other people are using in a different way. Or they could be, the detectors could be actually on the customer prem, so the customer doesn't have to export that network telemetry outside of their domain of control. From an orchestration standpoint, multiple per customer protection clusters, because we needed to know for customer A, we're going to do detect and redirect, so that's a different policy. For customer B, we're going to do Juniper router filtering, so that's a different protection policy. Using whether it's Juniper or if it's Arista or Cisco, we can even, there could be a Cisco network, there could be a combined network. So each of those can be supported by having different rule triggers and policies associated with them. So this is like kind of an MSP's view, and I know Alvaro, I won't steal his thunder, but it's really our flexibility that allows him to also be flexible in serving the needs of his customers and their desires. I think that's my last slide. How did I do on time? There we go.
Wasn't really interactive.
I know. I know, I tried. I threw you a bone, but Paul, you just like let me hang there, you know what I mean? I did have something that maybe we could talk about later, not now, but you know, I think Daniel kind of mentioned it, like security going into the networking group a little bit, or you know, in DDoS, we always often say that DDoS is kind of this unique gray area. It's like kind of security, it's kind of networking, it's availability, and then I think Corey said yesterday, it's like, oh, these guys that know both are kind of like unicorns, right? And I was just curious, like when we have a beer or whatever, if you think that, I do. Too much last night, I was late getting up, but no. But you know, having, are we training the next generation, you know, to really be armed with the tools? Should we be looking at, this is just me in the back of the room, like thinking today, like, should we be looking at these? Like we have everything is like security or networking. You have to do this track or that track, right? We're kind of like bifurcating them from the ground up, creating our own problem when really we're trying to create secure networks. So, you know, should they be bifurcated?
All we have to do is look at RSEs.
Yeah.
And the majority came from a networking background and moved into security.
Yeah.
Because, not just because of financial gain or anything like that, but they need both. We need both skills.
Yeah, you need to be able to go back to your point. In order to implement the solution and understand the customer's architecture.
Yeah.
You have a network
It's a combination of both.
of where the traffic flows are, so that you understand the most optimal way to deploy the sensor.
It's like a network knowledge, but a security attitude.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one, because people have to use 3D thinking.
Yes.
I try to say help with my colleagues, I'll go into an account and I say, DDoS, and the person, they say, my registrator, I vendor name. And I'm like, have you asked what that means?
Yeah.
I meet with some of the DNS providers, and they'll say, we do DDoS. I'll say, what do you do for DDoS? Every type of DDoS protection. Okay, so we can use, yeah, for general DDoS, do you do anything? They sell themselves like they do, but they don't even understand the question.
We've had this discussion internally so much. DDoS covers such a multitude of sins as a term. And the problem that you have is that when you start digging down into it, you know, it's a tiered approach. There's no silver bullet. And that's what people have to understand.
You also have to think about
Think about that argument though, right? And you've got everybody, the brother and the mother, who's out at the table and saying that they're a DDoS player.
Yes.
I mean, F5, when does a load balancer become a DDoS?
So I had this discussion. I was
The DDoS provider reverts to the fact that they actually have layer 7. But it is.
well, and that's an interesting.
Are you kidding? WAF is
It's layered. You can't just exclude
That-
one segment.
So I intended this at FortiGate, right? And they say FortiGates have DDoS. No, they do not. They have DDoS to protect themselves, not to protect the service. That's the big difference.
It's more than that though. Sometimes I can sell a solution, but if the solution is worse than the cure. If I design something where I'm having to hasten my traffic, so I stay up, but I decrease I increase latency so much that
The service is
there's
impacted.
more to it.
The service is impacted
There's a
itself.
WAF problem for DDoS, right? Or there's a DDoS problem for WAF.
Akamai has CDN. If I use Akamai for CDN and I go ask someone else for DDoS, I'm just procure
You
the
go into active mode with WAF though, you're dead.
Exactly.
Purpose built. So again, if you go to Zero Trust and you look at Zero Trust is happening, because now I've provided a unique access, but what you're talking about is heritage traffic, so it negatively impacted performance, but then is my SD-WAN here protected from DDoS, which is the point that you're making.
Yeah.
You need to think about the whole problem.
Well, look at that, we got interactive.
Yeah.
Once your screen turned off, all the content.
I know.
You didn't have to say anything, Jason.
Didn't wait to the end.
This is actually a slide. This is the best one.
We talk about this internally all the time. And I think the answer is that security has to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why we struggle all the time, because you can use a loading word like DDoS, and what does that mean? Or you could use a loading term on a cloud, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, what components, ransomware, who has a ransomware solution in the market? Raise your hand. Everybody's on that.
And everybody thinks they know what DDoS is, or they think, but it's so varied, so vast. And the one thing I say to everybody is, it's a unique security problem. Because we are so used to dealing with black and white and security, good and bad. DDoS is grey and shady.
But, you know, in anybody's defense, it's not like you go to school and you learn about DDoS, right? It's not like you go to networking and they necessarily teach you the finer deployment models of DDoS protection and algorithms and so forth. They don't do it in security. Listen, I'm certified in a tremendous amount of security. Yeah, of course, there's an availability discussion at the highest level, but at the technical level, you know, knowing encapsulated traffic patterns for wireless cell tower networks, it's not part of it, right? It's just not. So it's almost our burden to be able to describe the problem properly and have patience to be able to remove the ignorance. By that I mean really the lack of education in the space to go through this. And, you know, it really is a world where it's mostly ignorant, almost by design, right? It's just not part of professional education. And we just have to become, I think, patient with it along the way. I really believe that. Now, having said that, the tech is moving so fast, you know, with the VPCs and the clouds and the orchestration and the automation, that the problem is also moving very fast, so we have to educate ourselves on that problem. My biggest problem, when I think in the world of the changing landscape, we talk about the threats, but it's the single point of failures that I think we don't give ourselves enough dwell time to be able to understand. Multi-factor authentication is a single point of failure, let's be honest with ourselves. SASE solutions, CASB solutions, right? They're all, when Zscaler tells you that they're one of the most destined locations in the world, right, for an origination IP, that means single point of failure. So Zscaler goes down and your devices are, and I'm not trying to belittle Zscaler, but it's a single point of failure. And we should look at resiliency and single points of failure, not just by CVEs or by attack types, but also design. And I think that that's not being taught, right?
Yeah, I mean, all they have to do is find one chink in the armor. That's the challenge. Exhaust one resource and they win.
That's right, yeah.
That's the challenge.
But that's our discipline, that's our profession, and that's why we're here, and that's the solutions that we help to be able to craft into. But it is not simple, and it's not trivial, and it's not novel, and anybody suggests it is, just doesn't have the knowledge.
And that is exactly where the opportunity resides.
Exactly.
So if you can educate them, if you can share that knowledge, they will really appreciate it. They will trust you and give you the opportunity to develop it.
Precisely. Now, we didn't say, we didn't talk about this building at all, or about the Royal Sky. So as we end, I want to thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, thank you.